This video is for entertainment purposes only. None of the information you're about to hear should be considered medical advice, and you should always consult a licensed medical practitioner before embarking on a health or lifestyle change. Okay, so this week we're with Amanda from Carnivorous Me is your channel name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're I've noticed you're on Twitter and Instagram as well
Yes.
under the same name. Are you on
Yeah,
Facebook as
it's
well?
the
Or yeah.
at Carnivorous Me one.
Okay. Okay, I'll find all those and put all that information down in the description of the video. Sorry, just dropped something there. So yeah, thanks again for doing this. It's
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of your content lately on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and all that. So I wanted to get to know you a bit better, and maybe we could start off by, you know, if we learn a little bit more about yourself and how you came to get into the carnivore diet, and then we can get into how things are going from there.
No, that's okay. So how I kind of got started into carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
I have been on and off diets for my entire adult life. I was actually started to get overweight when I was about 12 or so. I'm actually been on antidepressants, or on and off, I should say, since then. And I've done things from like organic veganism to wild boiled potatoes to keto to Atkins and everything else. And it was just this yo-yo of up and down, the kind of roller coaster of losing weight, gaining weight. And then last year, I went to the emergency room and I actually thought I was dying. And I just kind of had a realization in that moment that I didn't actually want to die, despite me feeling like I thought I wanted to. Realized how selfish I had been by choosing food over what my husband and family needed. And my brother how I kind of got introduced to carnivore was my brother had been doing it for about a year and a half, and I'm the only, for the younger three of us, the only one overweight. But he is a binge eater, despite the fact that he looks, he's actually fit. And he'd been doing really well with that and lost 30 pounds, something like that. I tried it probably about 3 months before I went to the emergency room and just kind of was on it for like a week or two and then off. Then after the emergency room, I'm like, okay, that is it. I cannot do this anymore. And what's the opposite of binge eating? Well, restricting what I eat. And the more I started into it, and then I ran into Michaela Peterson's stuff, reading about that and watching her videos, I realized, because I have autoimmune issues, how much the food and the weight was causing issues for me. And that's kind of like my genesis story of how I got to carnivore, and now I'm on it for life.
Yeah, it's no, it sounds like a fairly common theme along, from people I've talked to. It's, you have everyone sort of tries different things and sometimes you fail and you start doing things that really aren't that healthy. And thankfully, you were able to find someone like Michaela that could sort of show you that pathway that could help you turn something into a lifestyle. Like it sounds like you're that's just a lifestyle for you now, and it's not, you've gotten away from the whole diet mentality, and you can just, like I say the same thing about keto for myself, or ketovore, or whatever it is that this is just what I want to do for the rest of my life, because that's just the way I feel the best. So
yeah.
So go
getting
ahead.
away from it's a diet, it really is, it's liberating, because then it doesn't have to be, well, I have to do this for 90 days and then the 91st day I can go eat a piece of cake. It's just like, this is how it is, and accepting that is a huge proponent of doing well with this kind of the way of eating.
Yeah, and I think that's, there's such a mental aspect to being able to make a transition like that. Like you say, it's 100% being able to tell yourself, well, if you accept it that this is what you're going to do, then it makes it a lot easier just to put it into practice. Yeah, no, like you say, it's the mental side of things is, I don't know. With a lot of people, I think it's a bigger part of
Hmm.
that transition than the actual act of changing what you eat. Like
Yeah.
if you can get uh, that thought process and get behind it 100%, I think
Hmm.
that makes a big difference.
Yeah, we just finished reading the book Atomic Habits, and he said something towards the end that really resonated well with me, that especially around food, it's not that we necessarily want that food, that cake. We want what eating that gives us, like that change of state it gives us. For me, emotional eating, right? You're
Hmm.
upset, you're depressed, whatever it is. Eating that will give you an emotional state change. You'll go from being depressed, even if it's for 2 seconds, you'll just have like this dump of serotonin, and it's like just a blip of happiness. And that's what we want. It's not necessarily the food, but the state of change it induces on us. That was a big thing. And I realized that's how important the mental aspect of changing the way we eat. I think it's like a 70-30. 70% is mental, the other 30% is what we eat.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. It's like for myself personally, I was every time I try and do something like diet, and I quit smoking 25 years ago, kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always been in my head first. So saying, okay, well, I have to do this. This has got to change. I have to do it, and then I try and implement the actual physical
Mm-hmm.
changes afterwards. Because if I try and not 100% commit to it mentally first, I've done different diets in the past, and ultimately they don't wind up lasting because you don't commit to them 100%.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
For
it.
sure.
You have to have both feet in, even if, because I think when you have both feet in, even if you have a stumble and you kind of trip for a second, you very easily can get right back into it because you see it as a lifestyle versus a temporary diet.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Um, so you're saying you've been carnivore basically strict for around a year, is it, that you've been doing it?
I'm the 28th of this month will be 10 months that I've done it.
10 months?
Um,
And
yeah.
and you've seen some, I've seen a lot of your pictures and your transformations. You've seen like some pretty remarkable results even just in that
Yeah.
short amount of time.
Yeah. As of just this past weekend, I'm at like 111 pounds lost. So it's like at 9.5 months, 111 pounds. I'm no longer a type 2 diabetic. My fatty liver is almost completely gone. My autoimmune pain is almost non-existent most of the time unless I really physically push myself. I went
Hmm.
from being 32 at having to use a walker to get around to now we walk at least 3 to 4 miles minimum every single day. And that doesn't even count the walking that you do just for daily activities. I'm talking about like a dedicated, we walk the dogs 3 to 4 miles every single day now. Um, I think I walk anywhere from 10,000 to 15,000 steps very easily daily, when before going honestly a quarter of a mile in the entire day would have been like the maximum distance I probably was walking.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's that kind of results that I find really amazing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll admit when I started keto 4 years ago, I wasn't in that place where you started sort of thing. I was
Mm-hmm.
overweight and I had some nagging issues and all that, but I was more trying to make sure I was around for my grandkids, as they grew up and they were getting older and I was having a hard time keeping up with them. So it was kind of so I that's all why I started. But then I hear stories like yours, and I don't know if you know Bob from semi-retired Bob. He's got the same kind of story where,
Mm-hmm.
10 months ago he couldn't even walk. Like he
Mm-hmm.
had the hardest time walking, and then in such a short amount of time, things can drastically change. And I think that's ultimately what I'm trying to bring to this kind of show is to let people know that you may be in a pretty dark place right now, but just look at your story and Bob's story and everyone else I've talked to that in such a short amount of time, you may not be exactly where you want to be, but you are, way
Yes.
further ahead than you were 10 months ago.
Yeah. I mean, in 10 months ago, the idea, is 360 pounds. How am I ever going to get to 150 pounds? That's 210 pounds. And just, it's like,
Hmm.
it's overwhelming. And my husband used to always say, stop trying to eat the entire elephant. Like, you have to do little baby steps. And it took small, repetitive actions for me to finally learn. My motto is progress over perfection. Small steps forward, no matter how small they are, as long as they are forward, you'll make progress. No, it might not be as fast as I wanted or, what I would expect, but life is life, things happen. And just as long as we're moving forward towards the progress, that is like the key, and not
Hmm.
focusing on the end goal. And that's actually another big thing is I realized all the terrible things that I've ever gone through in my life, especially around my weight and things like that. It it made me who I am today, and I love who I am today. And so regretting it and having shame about it doesn't do anything because I, it may have been tumultuous and painful, but it is what shaped me and who I am. And so even though a lot of people sitting in a dark place, it's very hard, it's very difficult while you're sitting in that area. It's what shapes us to be better. It takes us from going from like lumps of coal to diamonds as we kind of get life compresses us and challenges us. So just knowing that there is absolutely, it's a journey. It's not a destination. And as long as we focus on it being a destination, it is that diet mentality. And then when you fudge
Hmm.
up, you just like fall off because you're so mad at yourself.
Hmm. Yep, absolutely. I couldn't said it better myself. The turn it, you're going through what, you've gone through, what I've gone through, what everyone's gone through is,
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right, is does shape us into what we're doing now. So,
Mm-hmm.
so you're, yeah, I've noticed your husband's on your channel sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
So is he carnivore as well, or is he sort
He
of,
does.
yeah, so
I
he's straight
I
carnivore?
am very blessed to have the husband I have. He has done every diet. We've been together 11 years. 10, married 10, yeah. We've been together 11 and a half years. And he's done every diet I have ever done, the poor man. And he's always been tall and slender. I think he said when he went into the Navy, he was 130 pounds.
Mm,
Um, he started carnivore with me. He actually has lost 30 pounds. He has no more fat to lose, literally. But he lost 30 pounds pretty dang quick because he's 50. My husband's quite a bit older than I am, but he was getting that, like 50-year-old stomach and fat
mm-hmm,
nowhere else. But he's trimmed down to nothing, and his blood work is beautiful. That was actually funny enough. My PCP was very hesitant about me starting this, and he's gotten on board now. He's actually quite amazing. But my husband joining in and doing all the blood work was what made my PCP realize, oh, this probably isn't a terrible thing because my husband's blood work is beautiful for a 50-year-old. Like, it's better than most 30-year-old men. I mean,
mm-hmm,
it's just crazy.
mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great. I having that kind of support so close to you, I think is worth its weight in gold. Really, like you can't underestimate the value of having someone right there that is behind you 100% and
Yeah,
supporting
it's
you with whatever you
invaluable.
want to
It
do.
really is.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like I've sort of, me and my wife, we get we do fine. She's not keto, but we've adapted to sort of, you know, deal with my issues with having to get over how I was feeling and all that physically. Um, and she supports what I do. Like she would never tell me not to do it because she's seen how it's changed. But I think it's important that people understand that if you're starting something like this, if you don't have someone at home that's gonna follow along with you, then you need to find someone uh, like a community like yours or
Mm-hmm.
um, Dr. Barry or Two Crazy Ketos or one of those communities where you can find
Yeah,
the support that you need, right?
yes. It is vital to feel like you have people behind you.
Yeah. Yeah, and finding people that are truly behind you, I guess, and not just, you know, until you screw up and do something they don't agree with, and then they wind up saying nasty things. Which, I haven't run across too much, but I know it's out there,
Uh,
unfortunately.
there is the spectrum of the carnivore world, and this probably goes with any dietary anything
Hmm.
that because I've had people say to me because I do have a cup of coffee every morning, and they're like, coffee isn't carnivore. I'm 33. I did realize that coffee is a plant,
Hmm. Yeah.
but if it's the one thing that keeps people on, whatever, that's my
Hmm.
feeling. So there are the people who, if you deviate, they can be a bit cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's finding your niche, and I think that's why there's more than one community out there, right? Like Dr. Barry's Two Crazy Ketos, these kinds of things. Is you have to find the people that resonate with you, and
Hmm.
that's the big thing, is finding that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, yeah, you're right. Like, just those two channels right there.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Barry is more, let's say, like the technical side of, he'll bring you all of the why and how
Mm-hmm.
and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And, he is fairly consistent in his message of what he thinks the proper human diet is, like,
Yes.
and that I completely agree with him. But I could see why more people, so a lot of people could benefit from what he brings daily or weekly or whatever. But then on the other hand, Joe and Rachel at Two Crazy Ketos is more of a family kind of environment that
Mm-hmm.
is there to support you 100% no matter what you're doing. If you come in there and you say, oh, well, I had my birthday on the weekend and it just went completely south, well, nobody's going to say anything, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I find great about some of those communities.
Yeah. Yeah.
So cool. So, um, do you do specifically do any fasting with your diet, or is it just?
Um. Yeah. I mean, technically, right now I'm doing two MAD, so 2 meals a day. I was doing OMAD for quite a while there. But I do two MAD now, and I'll eat at like 10 o'clock, and then we eat around 4 or 5, just depending on the day. Then I don't eat any time outside those windows.
Hmm.
Um, I've done a few day fasts, like 2 and 3 day. However, especially myself being, um, have previously being a binge eater, I should say that. Uh, it is risky, and so I tell people who watch my channel, if you can do it, absolutely, kudos to you. But something I found is that right now I don't think about food unless it's I have to go to the grocery store to get something, or what are we going to take out in the morning for dinner. But when I fast, I become food obsessed. Like normally, I can go all day not thinking about food, but then the minute I start fasting, it's like food. Oh, that sounds good. Oh, that sounds, and it's ribeye and steak, but my mind was
Hmm.
obsessing about food, and I found it requires heavily on willpower, and that I do not have good willpower. Binge eaters are not good willpower people, and
Hmm.
I find it's just a very dangerous road, because fasting, yes, there's a lot of good benefits to it. However, is it worth risking falling off because you have induced yourself into a position where your willpower's run out, and then you're like, I'm gonna eat cookies and cakes because I'm just so hungry.
Yep, absolutely. No, that's a great way to look at it. You're
Mm-hmm.
right. I think a lot of people don't understand their sort of personality when it comes to food,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't differentiate between really being hungry or that mental part of it where you're thinking about food all the time. You may not even be
Yeah.
hungry, but you're like, oh, if I can't have it, I really want it. So
And I
you're
think
right.
that's for me. For me, that's it. It's like, because I can't have a steak. Oh man, it just sounds so good. I'm just gonna like
Yeah,
literally drool about it for 3 hours and realize I
yeah.
can't eat for another 24 hours. And it's a terrible time for me.
Hmm.
I do agree with you. I think honestly, the biggest piece of advice I could ever give somebody is discovering what true hunger feels like. Not the mental hunger, not the
Hmm.
cravings, true hunger and satiety. That has probably been my most beneficial thing that I've discovered along this journey. I eat probably a third of what I used to eat volume wise. And I'm not talking about when I was having a binge. I'm just talking about like when I'm eating, because
Mm-hmm.
I notice in my stomach, and it's different for everybody. I stop eating when I'm no longer hungry, not when I'm full, when I'm no longer hungry. And I
Mm-hmm.
found that is like the perfect place for my body of I've eaten enough, I won't be hungry till the next day, done.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things that unless if like if you're eating garbage all the time and sugar and grains and everything,
Mm-hmm.
you can never actually get that feeling. And I think that's well, obviously that's the trapping of processed foods, right? Like they're
Yes.
meant to make you want to eat more because you never feel like you're actually full. And then
Yes.
you eat
And
more and you think you're full and you're not full and then you eat more and it's getting to know your body and getting to know what full is to you, you know,
mm-hmm.
not I don't like getting stuffed. I don't like get overeating, you know, thinking, oh, well, I have to have this many calories in the day and whatever that you know, I do the same thing. I just eat until, you know, I'm like, my brain says, oh, no, we're full now. Let's just stop eating and, you know,
Mm-hmm.
we'll pick it back up tomorrow.
Yeah. It's a very, it took me months really to hone in on that because I've been living with eating from like here, like this is what I would listen to eat, like, oh, you're hungry, you want XYZ, and eating that until my brain said stop eating. But there's a 20-minute lag between the stomach and the brain of when the chemicals say, okay, we're full, stop eating. And that's why a lot of times when people are full, after 15 or 20 minutes, they're really, really full because there's that lag in between. It just takes practice. And I don't. I'm the same way. I do not stress about how many calories, how much fat, how much protein. You know, our bodies are extremely, extremely intelligent. And I trust that my body knows to tell me what I need when I need it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I still have 100 pounds to go. Well, 99 pounds technically. I still have 99 pounds to go. And I got plenty of energy on me stored, you know, so I don't stress about that in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about Dr. Barry is he will never sort of focus on calories whatsoever. You know, it's
Yeah.
your body's smart enough to know what it needs. You know, if you're hungry
Mm-hmm.
all the time, well, then you're probably not eating enough. You know,
Yeah.
but if you're full, then chances are you've eaten enough, and you know your body will manage until the next time
Yeah.
you're ready to eat. So, but just like you say, it takes time for
Mm-hmm.
everybody to learn
Oh
that,
yeah.
and you can't. It's not one size fits all for everybody
Mm-hmm.
either. Like you can't say, well, this is how you're going to feel because you know everybody feels differently
Yes, definitely.
for
It's a
sure.
very personalized, you know, feeling to understand ourselves because each body is unique, and there's no way we can tell people. Like, people always ask me like, "How? What's the volume?" Or you know, "Do you weigh your food?" It's like, no. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
unless you were exactly me with all of the activity I do now plus XYZ, telling you to eat, you know, 10 ounces of steak twice a day or something, it's not going to be helpful because it all depends on what you're doing to, you know, how much energy you need to consume. And
Mm-hmm.
calories are a very poor unit of energy measurement for the fact that there's so many variables behind it. But something I do like love to reiterate to people is we can overeat on carnivore because I've heard so many people like you can eat as much meat as you want. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Food is energy. Excess fat in our body is excess stored energy. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but I mean, it's very important to understand that. And this is also, I think, counting calories is pointless because 5 calories you've eaten and then 5 you expend. It just doesn't work that way. It's not a 1-to-1, especially depending on what you've been eating and what you are eating and frequency and all that. Anyways, I think it's something really important to mention to people is not to stress so much about focusing on the macros so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I'm assuming you don't, just like you said, you're not someone who's tracking, you know, how much protein you're eating a day and how much
Yeah.
fat and all that. Yeah.
The only time I have tracked, and I will weigh my food, and I do find the calorie count, not necessarily to aim for anything, just because calories give you like a gross idea of how much energy you're consuming. When I have stalls that I'll take a week and kind of journal out. Like I discovered recently, about I don't know 6 or 8 weeks ago, I was doing OMAD, and I realized as I was journaling, I did it for an entire week. I was eating more food in that one sitting than I was when I was eating twice a day. I
Mm.
mean, it was only like 6 more ounces of ribeye, but that's still more energy than I needed because I'd be so hungry by the time I got there. Well, now that I do two mad, I end up eating, less energy now when I have like 2 eggs and bacon in the morning, and then I'll have, depending 8 to 12 ounce of ribeye at night, or whatever the beef I'm having. I found for myself just journaling that, like, oh, I actually end up eating less twice a day than just having one meal a day. So those are the
Mm.
times I think I find it helpful to track that briefly.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, no, it makes sense. If things aren't working the way,
Mm-hmm.
or if they stop working, or things change, and even if it's funny, like even as you're progressing on your journey, you still have to revisit what you're doing, and
Yes.
and make changes, because as your
Mm-hmm.
body adapts to what you're doing, sometimes you just need to make a change for the sake of making a change, so your body doesn't know what's going on, right?
Yeah, yeah, because things like as my activity level increased, I realized I was consuming more. And it's subtle, it doesn't happen quickly. And I just
Hmm.
didn't realize it was happening until, like, as I said, I journaled like a week and realized it's like bringing out the receipts. If you track it just briefly when you're having issues or things aren't going the way you expect them, it really does shine a light on where an issue might be.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So um, the YouTube channel, did you start that right away when you started your journey, or is that something that
I
came afterwards,
started
or?
2 weeks in from starting Carnivore. So 14 days in is when I started my YouTube channel.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Like I love seeing all the different channels out there that are
Mhm.
reaching a lot of people, and I find uh, the carnivore niche sort of, there's a lot of people that are interested in that nowadays. I find, like, the whole word keto is kind of a, I don't know, I think a lot of people got sick of it. um, that's why I like when Dr. Barry just started calling it proper human diet, just to get away from these labels that
Yeah.
everyone seems to try and tear down whenever they hear things like carnivore and keto and things like that.
Yeah.
Cool. So I won't take up too much of your time tonight, but I do like to ask each guest, and you've already probably answered this question a couple of times tonight, but I just like to end things off with, if there's something you could, if someone talked to you today saying, well, I want to start this diet tomorrow, sort of what kind of advice would you give them to give it like a good chance of it working?
Uh, Two pieces of advice. My first one would be reading Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. That was for the mental aspect change. It was huge for me. It is what helped me accept responsibility that my decisions were what got me to 360 pounds. It helped me let go of the shame and guilt tied to that so I could move forward. That is very, very important. It's very hard to try to change and do new things when you're carrying, 32 years of luggage behind me and not letting that go. Uh, the second thing is, honestly, it goes back to learning true hunger, learning what true hunger feels like, not the cravings, the brain saying, I need to eat something. It's a feeling in the stomach that you just have to hone in on as time goes by, and trusting that our bodies are extraordinary things. They are just so extraordinary. We can be cut and healed and damage our bodies, and it repairs it. Trusting that. And those would be like the number two, for one and two things that I would absolutely suggest someone does.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's great advice. Like there's, like you say, that covers off the mental part of it first, and
Mm-hmm.
then, finding that true hunger signal that can definitely assist you in turning this into a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, like I said at the beginning, I'll link all of your social medias down in the description of the video. And unless there's anything else you wanted to add to the discussion, we can wrap this up here. And
It was a lovely discussion. Thank you for having me on.
well, thanks. I definitely appreciate you taking the time to come and share your story and your insight onto this. So.